Your hosts have earned a reputation as fierce and effective advocates inside and outside of the courtroom. Both partners are experienced trial attorneys who have been board certified in family law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization.
Thanks for turning into the For Better, Worse, or Divorce podcast, where we provide you tips and insights on how to navigate divorce and child custody situations here in Texas. I'm Brian Walters, and I'm today joined by Jake Gilbreath, as well as the firm's Marketing Director Katy Justice, again for our second episode in our quarterly series on pop culture, celebrity news, and how it fits into family law cases. For this episode, we'll be talking about recent news where Shanna Moakler accused her ex-husband Travis Barker of parental alienation after he started dating Kourtney Kardashian. Parental alienation is a common term for potential new clients calling the firm, so we thought it would be good to break down this particular situation and our experience in handling similar situations to what these famous people are going through. So, Katie, you want to take it away from there with some of the basics?
Yeah, so I'll be referencing articles from USA Today, People, and E! Online. So a little bit backstory. Moakler and Barker divorced in 2008 after 4 years of marriage. They have 2 children together, Alabama and Landon. Barker is now married to Kourtney Kardashian after dating since 2018. They married in 2022 and welcomed a son, Rocky, this past November. In a recent interview, Moakler said when Travis got with Kourtney, there was some parental alienation going on there. Travis, even when we weren't together, always wanted to be a super dad. I'm the best parent. I'm the thing and that. And she was like, bro, you win. Like, you're the winner here. You have all the money. You have all of this. Moakler said that her children were enamored with the Kardashians' family celebrity status when Barker and Kardashian began dating. Another quote from Moakler said, I think there was a lot of glitter and fame, and they watched them on TV, and now their dad's dating one, and they're going to be on the show, and I think they get all caught up in that, which young kids would do. They are buying them gifts, going on events, meeting Kanye, and all this big stuff. So Moakler stated that she had to remove herself from the situation and let her kids come back to her when they're ready.
Yeah, I mean, we hear this, obviously not the exact same facts, generally portrayed to us when we initially talk to people that there's a deliberate effort to exclude one parent from the children by the other parent. And I think that depends a little bit on the age and specifics of the kids and specifics of the situation. What do you hear when you talk to people about this, Jake?
Yeah, so I guess my first reaction is that it's a spectrum, right? And you see this too, Brian, and people call in, and if there's a problem with the parent-child relationship, like it sounds like this individual Moakler is saying that there is a problem with her relationship, it's a lot of times we're kind of looking for the cause, right? It could be something benign. I guess it's never benign because the effects are a big deal, but it could be something, a child just getting older, and they're not necessarily as bonded with the parent as they were when they were a little child. I mean, teenagers, for those who have teenagers, or obviously my kids are younger than teen years, but dealing with clients have teenagers. There's a natural estrangement that just happens as part of a child developing, and as they get older. So it could be that. It could be something what that we call alignment, or the mental health professionals call alignment. I know we talked about this some on the podcast before, where a child just starts to gravitate towards one parent over the other. It could be that parent's doing something specifically to try to influence the child. It could be just because of the family dynamic or blended family issues that a child just gravitates towards one parent or the other. This situation, it sounds like a little bit different than what we often see with blended families. Sometimes you have a new spouse, new dating relationship come in, and a child, particularly an older child, may reject, the new addition to the family, especially if there's half brothers, half sisters, brothers and sisters coming into the picture. It can be a lot for a child to deal with, right? A changing family dynamic. And sometimes the natural inclination for a child is to want to remove themselves from what's new, as opposed to this situation with Moakler, where it sounds like the child's gravitating towards the new blended family. But anyways, and then on the extreme end of the spectrum, you have parental alienation, like it says Moakler's sounds like she's accusing the other side of. And we see that a lot. And then parental alienation, like we've talked about in other episodes, parental alienation itself is a spectrum to where you can have mild alienation, moderate, and then obviously your extreme cases. None of it's acceptable behavior on a parent who's alienating a child, and all of it requires intervention from the court system to both therapeutic intervention and intervention from the court system to fix it. So I think a lot, Brian, I'll ask your take, but I think a lot of the intake is trying to figure out, what's going on with the relationship when a potential client's calling in and they're having problems with the relationship with the child. What's going on with the relationship, and then start delving into what's causing it. And Brian and I have been doing this long enough where you can get a pretty good sense just in the console what could be causing it. But then a lot of times there's further evaluations done through the court system with mental health professionals or custody evaluations or guardian ad litem or amicus attorneys, all stuff that we've talked about in other podcasts. But that initial consult is sort of starting to scratch the surface of what's going on, and then how can we fix the situation? Yeah,
I agree. And I think the timing aspect, again, is important to it. So it seems here that this has been going on a while for these folks, and the mom took an unusual approach to it. She said, I'm going to basically not fight you on it. I'm going to step back and wait for the kids to come back to me. And it sounds like they did. I'm just reading between the lines on it, and things are okay now. I mean, these kids are adults at this point. They're 18 and 20. And that's an option, right, for some folks, is to try to wait it out and see what happens. But it's a pretty risky option, I would say, a lot of the time, because if there is true parental alienation, I don't know if it's going to get any better. I doubt it's going to get better if you just kind of step back. In fact, it can probably be used by the alienating parent to see your mom doesn't care, or see she didn't really love you, or those kind of things. And then you're out of the picture long term. And once the kids turn 18 and 20, like these two kids, there's nothing the court system can do for you anymore. It's too late. So it seems like that strategy worked for her, but that's a difficult one to do as a parent, I think, just as a parent, because you love your kids and you want to see them, but also risky because you worry they're going to hit 18 and never hear from them again. So I wouldn't want that to happen as a parent.
The few times I have seen people take that approach, it's after, pretty serious consultation with a child's therapist, and of course their own personal therapist. And, we're not mental health professionals, but my experience is, just like you said, Brian, it's, the degree that you're fighting may be directed by the child's therapist or the family therapist or your individual therapist, but just completely stepping back and stepping away, that's a hard choice. And I'm sure there are situations where therapeutically that makes sense, but it can unfortunately backfire. And as a parent, it may just feel like that's your only option, right? I can't win this battle. I keep on fighting it. It makes it worse. The alienating parent uses everything I do against me. People often call our office. They feel like the court system's rigged against them. They feel like it's helpless. They may have been to court multiple times and it's not getting better, or they don't feel like the judge is hearing them or the guardian's hearing them. Frankly, it sounds a little cheesy, but frankly, people sometimes call our office as kind of a last resort that they just haven't gotten anywhere. Sometimes years. It's been years and people are calling us. Back to that initial consult, sometimes you're telling people, I understand that it's been years and it's frustrating and you don't feel like you've made progress, but we're going to take a different approach through our firm and take another go at it. And I've seen that work. I mean, every situation's different, but sometimes switching up the team or switching up the therapy team or the lawyers involved or the guardian involved is just the solution that's needed. But, just giving up and walking away, it's, like we said, sometimes that's Sometimes that's the right thing, and sometimes it works out. But I would have serious consultation with the therapist first, and certainly with a experienced family lawyer to make sure that you've explored all your options first.
I have a question on this, actually, because a lot of the potential new clients that calling our firm, that's not so much in this scenario, but parental alienation is a really common term that potential new clients throw around. But a lot of times it's coming like bad mouthing from the other side. Like they think the other parent is kind of convincing the child not to go with them. And it kind of sounds like Moakler is not doing herself maybe any favors in this scenario by kind of talking to the press about her relationship with her kids and kind of what's going on, because that's going to kind of come back to them, especially if the kids are 18 and 20, which they are in this case. So do you have any advice of, communication and how to breach that topic without going to the press or talking to the kids negatively or talking to other family members or anything like that that's going to get back to the kids?
Yeah, I would say generally speaking, keep it away from the kids, right? Obviously, it's a different world that these people live in, and their lives are lived in the press and in the public eye. Some of our clients like to live their lives in the public eye through social media or through other various ways of involving anybody they can think of in their family drama. Generally speaking, every case is different, but generally speaking, anything you can do to keep the children out of the conflict is better. Generally speaking, although this one I could probably say globally, it never helps your case posting about it on the internet, on social media, or creating your website about your case, or the various different things that we've seen people put on the internet. It's just never helpful. It never works out. It probably feels good in the moment, and then it ends up being used against you in a case. And, people need to remember, particularly in parental alienation cases, you really are under even more so of a microscope than you typically are in the litigation scene, right? Going through a divorce or child custody case, your life is already under a microscope. When you're dealing with parental alienation on both sides, everybody is looking at absolutely everything that you do to try to see what it plays into the narrative of why we're seeing the situation that we see with the kids, right? So if you have an alienated parent whose relationship with their child is damaged, they are under the microscope, and a lot of times you'll see a situation where if they make one wrong move, everybody throws their hands up and goes, well, that's why you don't have a relationship with your kids, because you did this minor thing wrong. And so, sorry, we can't help you. And we all just sort of give up. And on the flip side, right, if you're the parent that's being accused of alienating the child and everybody's frustrated with the situation and you make one wrong move, everybody throws their hands up and goes, see, it's all your fault. You're the one that's causing this. And it disproportionately lands on your feet. So, just staying out of the public sphere, keeping it away from the kids is really the best thing you can do. And because you are under a microscope going through litigation, but particularly with parental alienation involved.
Well, let's talk about some of the things, and you've touched on some of them, about the challenges of proving parental alienation in a courtroom. I would start by saying I think most judges view the fact that initially, when you walk into the courtroom, that there's probably some problems in both houses, that we're not here just because of one side. And so if you do feel like, hey, I'm just trying to parent and be a good parent, and the other side is just alienating them out of anger or revenge, or in this particular case, because there's kind of a shiny object that the other person's married, how do you start to overcome that assumption or presumption?
Yeah, I think it starts back to what we said just a few minutes ago, right? Which is there needs to be some intervention. It is extremely rare that the option is just do nothing. Alienation tends to get worse if it's because you're essentially, if you don't do anything, you're teaching the alienating parent. You're teaching the alienating parent that the strategy is working, and it's not like they're going to just stop having achieved their goals. A true alienator's goal is for you to have no relationship for your children, and for your children to hate you, and they won't stop until they achieve that. And then even when they achieve that, they won't stop, right? For the true alienators. So doing nothing is never an option. I mean, as far as what actually gets done in the court system is a spectrum, like we've talked about in other podcasts, just like we were talking about a few minutes ago. On the extreme, right? The really, really extreme cases of parental alienation, the literature really is clear that the alienating parent, the parent that's doing the alienating, should be cut off from the child. The child should be removed from that parent and placed with the alienated parent so you can work on repairing the relationship. And then, of course, everybody needs to be in some type of mental health counseling. Those are the extreme. Less extreme, right? And that may be what you feel needs to happen immediately. That's a hard burden to get to that level of extreme intervention right off the bat with a judge. It's happened. We've certainly had those cases. We've certainly had that happen in cases where we've advocated for it. Sometimes it's a slower process, and it can be a frustrating process that starts with, at a minimum for intervention, therapeutic intervention with family therapy and individual therapy. A lot of times I'm telling clients, to prove parental alienation, even though we know in our heart of hearts it's happening in the other household, it's very difficult to prove. To get to where we can get a court's attention out, we need to start with therapeutic intervention, with a family therapist, individual therapy for everybody. And then those mental health professionals, if you get a good team involved, their job would be to sniff out the alienation and start proposing or advocating for more court intervention or more therapeutic intervention or whatever it looks like. So I'm always telling people it's a spectrum. Who knows what we'll be able to, as we dig into the case, we may be able to prove more than we think we're going to. We may not be able to, but everybody's going to agree that there needs to be some therapeutic intervention on the case. If there's a problem with the relationship between a parent and a child, whether it's called by parental alienation or estrangement, or like you said, Brian, the child just likes the shiny new thing in the other household, the answer is all the same, which is therapeutic intervention. And then a lot of times we'll see cases where that therapy team gets involved, and then once they sort of sink their teeth into it, they start sniffing out the parental alienation and start recommending more interventions, either therapeutically or through the court system. And then, one last thing to add to that, a lot of times courts are appointing what's called a guardian ad litem or an amicus attorney to help with that investigation and make recommendations for the court for both therapeutic intervention and court orders to try to fix the situation. So it's going to be a spectrum, right? It may be a slower burn depending on the situation. It may not be, right? We get parental alienation cases where you're in court within the month advocating for those extreme interventions. But just like a medical procedure, right? It's a spectrum, and there may be less invasive approaches to start off with before you go the full-blown, major surgery, I guess, by analogy. Every single case is different, but I mean, now we've said it 4 or 5 times in this podcast. The answer is rarely do nothing. And the answer certainly is almost never don't have a lawyer, just sit there and take it, and maybe it'll get better on its own.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Well, that's all we have for today. This was our second episode in our ongoing pop culture series, so be on the lookout for more episodes like this. If there's a topic you'd like to discuss, just email us at podcast@waltersgilbreath.com. We welcome all feedback. I'm Brian Walters, joined by Jake Gilbreath and Katy Justice. Thanks for listening.
For information about the topics covered in today's episode and more, you can visit our website at waltersgilbreath.com. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of For Better, Worse, or Divorce, where we post new episodes every first and third Wednesday. Do you have a topic you want discussed or a question for our hosts? Email us at podcast@waltersgilbreath.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time.